That's good. That's good.
Without you, we improve the arguments just in time.
Wow. This before. I will take credit for that. Thank you. Oh yeah. I will go to the off. I thought we were good. Yeah.
You know, it's damn weird. It's like incest. Incest. You know, incest.
Oh, yes, sir.
I never thought of ocean park. He didn't care about the concept. Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
He was like, you all agree? I don't care.
Why would we don't agree?
I will carry on. Strong. Can't do anything.
That's his student.
Leave you out the point.
Live stream.
All right, welcome everyone to round 3 of MCMC. Invite the Prime Minister to open the debate here.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker. This is private communities. Objectives. So we like to characterize and put this debate into context in which this debate forces us to engage with the motion which is specifically about selectivism. That means individuals affected by of the debate in a way to the best efficiency. So things such as altering your Facebook profile or merely ranting about an issue, liking or retweeting that one comment about social injustice issue. So in a nutshell, it literally is a feel-good measure where you just feel good by yourself and nothing more. So that means we don't have to show you what alternatives you have preferred, because we wish selectivism would utilize capital such as time and non-effective measure that you feel as if you are contributing. So actually we understand from said opposition, they will indefinitely talk about selectivism that will lead to like better attention to issues and empathize with the situation that somehow lead to tangible outcome. This is not the case. We still we're debating on the ground that selectivism has very little effect in nature. So what is selectivism? What is the alternatives to selectivism? We think obviously it's activism, because this would, if those people actually do go to the ground and meet those people that they are trying to help. So here's where we shun those individuals who think they're making a change by not doing anything. So what is my first subsentence? my first subset is let's talk about selectivism and why feel-good measures are not. This debate has to revolve around telling you what is the world that should have been. This debate should have been where people would actively help out that they think that they are helping by retweeting or ranting on Facebook. So that's one where people actively participate in aiding discourses like the Rohingya flight, in which people would only sympathize with the Rohingyas through Facebook, through social media, because they only talk about it in social media, not really helping, not actually going to like the UNHCR to help these people, where they see, even in restaurants, they see those Rohingya kids going to them asking for money, yet they didn't do anything to actually help these people. They know that these people are violated, that they talk about these things on social media, but they didn't help where they see these people on a daily basis. So, like for example, the refugee crisis that Misa told you about just now, those have tangible outcome that preferably your capital should be spent upon. No, thank you. I'll take one from the opposition. Because same way that you think you have moral duty in order to tweet about these people, so it's the same reason why you should preach it on a large scale. So that means you have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Because just when you have moral duty you have moral duty to put that into exercise, that means actively participating in what you talk about. So OO has to tell us why it's harm for you to be an activist rather than selectivist. Before I move on to my second subject. Yes.
Great. Can you please explain how there's going to be a transfer from selectivist into activist in equal proportion and equal capacity?
Yes. So when people talk about this thing, they should have some kind of moral duty to actually do about it. How did this come about? Where you empathize with this plight, you feel angry about the issues, the injustices that happen, like Black Lives Matter. You're angry that people are killed on a daily basis. Black people are killed on a daily basis by these cops. Then you want to go out and protest about it. Protesting is one of activism that you can do, and not just sit around and write on your phone about how
To live stream now.
Yes.
Okay. Can. Improve now.
Yeah, opposition lah.
People still can. To activists, the true comparison and the comparative that we are defending or opening opposition is to what tangible. Mr. Speaker, we tell you that in a world without slacktivism, will affect them, that is able to do the bare minimum, will otherwise do nothing at all. And my competing analysis is to clarify this point. Activism does not do something that they otherwise would not have done. Ultimately, this right now, that sharing an article that shows their plight means that something tangible may happen. Again, more in my substantives, right? Secondly, we talked about, well, this is a feel-good measure and there was some moral objection that they had towards these individuals not being altruistic enough when it came to be slacktivists, right? But we tell you that people donate to charity to feel a sense of altruism all the time. This does not in any way diminish the value of their money to these people. This in no way does diminish the value of what that money can do to improve the lives of the people who ultimately become the beneficiaries of charities, Mr. Speaker. We tell you that a staffing orphan doesn't often look at his aid package and wonder about the intentions of the our resources will not exist in the first place because people who are not able to participate in activism will otherwise not participate at all. Why do I say so, right? On to my first substantive on individuals and their incentives, right? Firstly, people like you and me have different priorities. We have constraints on our time. We have different opportunities to help other people, and we have different means and ways of doing so, right? This debate exists on a spectrum, right? On either extreme in this particular debate, you have either people who these issues were so central to that they would help regardless. That still exists on our side. And you still have people who do nothing either way, even with activism, right? Where we are targeting, and we can some small but measurable way. Why do these people opt for slacktivism instead? And here's a concept of rational ignorance, right? When the cost of getting educated or when the cost of contributing higher than the rate to your time and to your resources. Slacktivism, fortunately, lowers that cost on rational ignorance. It lowers the cost on your time, on your resources, because now you can contribute in a way that you otherwise could not have without slacktivism existing at all. And this incentivizes individuals who have very little of both time and resources to be able to contribute. How are they affected? We think that the opportunity to create social awareness exists, right? Especially on social media where this debate lies. We think that the fact that individuals change their profile pictures, they share articles, they post things in support of things like gay marriage, in support of like Rohingya people in Myanmar and Bangladesh, right? This means that these articles and websites, the more they are able to educate themselves and the sheer volume of information that exists out there, right? On a balance of probabilities, borrowing from the room next door, we think that there's higher chances of us being able to find that few people who may actually be able to have the means and opportunity to help, for example, say the Rohingyas in Bangladesh. That's a balance of probabilities that exists exclusively on side opposition, right? The thing is, what happens is, once you have stated your stance, once you have shown down from that stance, to change their minds, to change their stance, right? Without appearing contradictory or hypocritical, things that no individual wants to be labeled as, right? And we think that even then, even if they do nothing beyond that, it reduces opposition to progressive change. But we think that, and here's where I deal with how slacktivists may become activists. We say that it also does happen on our side, because the moment you become a slacktivist, we think that this creates an entry point for further calls to action, right? And it creates opportunities for people to do more when they can, if they could. And we think that's particularly important. But this also affects the ways that even politicians and legislators think as well, right? Because when the overarching majority demonstrate a strong show of support, even if it wasn't strong, even if it's 1 million people showing minimal support, we think this changes the way politicians structure their campaigns and structures the way that they push for legislation, right? Because this pushes the politicians to championing these policies for even if issues that appear to be central to their constituents themselves, right? That's how we got gay marriage legalized in the US in the first place. Even if we see that people jumped on the bandwagon subsequently, that's how we got gay marriage legalized in other countries as well. These are tangible changes that slacktivism has exclusively provided to the world and to progressive change. I'm approaching 6 minutes here, PR, you better give it now, right? But thirdly, on my final substantive, on community support, right? We think that when people show overarching support for certain progressive social changes, or mosaics, right? Safe spaces are created through slacktivism. How does this work, right? Come on, guys. And this, firstly, we think this empowers and encourages individuals to come out and speak about their experiences. They didn't speak out before because there was always a fear of isolation, a fear that if they spoke out, then nobody would support them. But slacktivism, people doing the bare minimum, is at least a show of support that encourages and empowers these individuals to find confidence in themselves. An issue, an identity, a moral conscience. You care less about the issue of gay marriage, but you care more if you actually knew that real people were being affected by it, right? And we also price of a post, right? I talked to you about the incentive change, how we incentivize politicians to take up certain key issues, and how we create a community that ultimately benefits progressive change. For those reasons, we oppose.
Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Always need to kind of understand people that other people will respond to because I don't think that people, everyone will see someone changing their profile picture to the parents.
Understanding slacktivism makes us understand why exactly people want to feel as if they are contributing to a certain cause that may not have as much effect as you would have assumed it would then have. Side of opening our position, entered this debate and wanted us to defend a world where there was no slacktivism at all, which doesn't really make sense, Mr. Speaker. But why exactly? Because when we told you this, from Yasin's speech, we already told you that this debate was more about a principle justification as to why exactly we would prefer activism more than slacktivism at the end of the day. But even if, Mr. Speaker, we will still engage as to why exactly activism is not that far from being able to also perform slacktivism at the end of the day. So let's make the first rebuttal necessary. Can we then defend nothing at all under our side of the house, where they say we have little benefits and that's okay, somehow opening government doesn't have any benefits at all? But instead, Mr. Speaker, we told you that we prefer a more activist paradigm because there is more effects as to you rather than you being a slacktivist than it is to become
stance that they should have taken under the of the House
was exactly to tell us why, even if without you contributing items towards refugees increase, or only making sure that you like that certain comment, or only making a Facebook post, Mr. Speaker, how that effect will be any better than you actively and directly participating in their help at the end of the day. But secondly, Mr. Speaker, even if, and here's where we at least defend a world with anti-slacktivism at all, Mr. Speaker, we told you that in a world where there's no ability for you, let's say we live in a paradigm of the 80s and there's no Twitter at all, at that point, a person is not able to conveniently then submit themselves towards a slacktivism because their option doesn't exist, but instead you have to submit to the very fact that the only way that you can then contribute to the society, Mr. Speaker, is to then make sure that it is also active at the end of the day. But thirdly, Mr. Speaker, they told us that because there's a low threshold within slacktivism itself, that's good, because someone who comes back from work and can't really help can do something where they just make a simple Facebook post. We tell you two things, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, that is still minimal in ensuring that a tangible benefit can still happen. But secondly, the debate has to revolve around a more middle ground of us understanding the debate was about someone who probably wakes up next day and says, at least I want to help the cause. At that point, because there is a low threshold in you submitting yourself to activism, you are more likely now going to that convenient ability rather than you submitting yourself towards activism at the end of the day. I have two issues to talk about in my speech. No, thank you. Firstly, why slacktivism feeds into the false inherently harmful, and secondly, why is this especially important in a scenario where there's a day and age of technological leaps that we're making within status quo itself. Let's talk about the first issue, why slacktivism feeds into a false facade of help. No, thank you. At the very least, Mr. Speaker, we told you that you can show your support and possibly have an effect that's minute because you somehow think that minimal effort is something that can affect the world at the end of the day. But nothing from like Mark Siew's speech directly translated into people wanting to more at the end of the day. Even if you were regretting as opposed to why exactly you're an activist. Because we told you, Mrs. Why is it not true on three responses? That the alternative firstly, activism is not that far from slacktivism in many cases, Mr. Speaker. But the option of slacktivism in front of you, more than not, only makes you step up to that threshold of saying, I've already liked that Facebook comment, let me stop there. The same way that you put something more convenient in front of people, Mr. Speaker, they're more likely going to take the option rather than not. And that's exactly why we come from opening up and tell you why. Then the next day you wake up and say, at least I've tweeted about it, we regret it, and somehow it's enough. And you stop, you have in this requirement of tweeting about it instead of making sure that they are the activists. But on the comparative, what happens on our side? When you say, I want to help, and there's no Twitter in front of you as we regret it, that means that you are more than not going to be the exact person because you understand that some debaters are going to raise and want to contribute towards that at the end of the day. Merely allowing people to change their Facebook profile picture means that you allow them to only submit to a more convenient way in understanding that thing. But thirdly, Mr. Speaker, and this came from Yasmin's speech, there's a placebo effect of happiness that you put upon these people, and here's where we directly engage with the principles of this debate at the end of the day. Because you make a person happy when they shouldn't be. You understand that you are still meeting the bare requirement of a minimum in order to make them aid this certain cause at the end of the day. But what does that mean? Because I like that comment, I think I'm helping parents. But that doesn't really mean that people within Paris are still not being discriminated at the end of the day. That's not as good as someone being an active activist and coming out there and at least telling people on the larger scale that you should be this kind of person instead of only sharing a post that has
to that point that if a particular issue was that important and that central to you, you would do something about it. Be an activist, right? Activism is an option to the people. Otherwise, tell me why you reject the contribution, however many.
Mate, I hope Nitya can really defend this idea where if it is at least convenient, you will not take an option and not go for activism at all. And that's what we at least have told you from our side of the house. Fourthly, this was also said in Yasmin's speech, you create lackadaisical people, as Mark just said in the POI, that, oh, at least I meet this bare requirement, somehow I don't really help. But why is that important? Because in this current day and age, where you have a lot of people and the younger generation submitting towards slacktivism at the end of the day, that means that you have people who think that within the current generation, it's only enough for you to tweet about it at the end of the day. Take that, Mr. Speaker, multiply by the billions of people who have Facebook accounts, for example, and that does as much as happens in the current scenario within status quo. Slacktivism allows those billions of people submitting, rather than all those billions understanding that although not everyone can fly to Myanmar, at least under our side of the comparative, we make those people consider the choices of activism any far more than you can submit yourself towards slacktivism. On that scale, Mr. Speaker, we've shown you why it is important in this current day and age. We take the debate.
Fundamentally, things down what slacktivism culture is about.
And the speaker for the screen, let's give them up.
Yeah. Almost new kind of culture that we are finding ourselves into. So, at the end of this party that we are, when we have that we don't take knowledge as well, our inability
it is important firstly to recognize the characterization that occurs when it comes to comparing slacktivists and activists. Activists, as Mark has told you, has these three characteristics, right? Number one, they are financially capable. Secondly, they're socially aware. And thirdly, they have the political connection in which the combination of these three factors is what makes them so successful in helping people in Myanmar or helping people in Bangladesh. The comparative is, ladies and gentlemen, is that not everyone has access to one or even three of these characteristics. In that scenario, in this world in which those individuals don't have access to those things, what is that they can do to help? We tell you, in a world in which share this information, and where it becomes to a certain extent where these individuals share information and reach to individuals who actually have one of those characteristics, who before this didn't feel good factor. Then these individuals will also be more willing to contribute more. The moment they have those resources, or the moment they are able to access these resources, these are individuals who therefore can be activists, right? But the point at which they are slacktivists, because they can only do the bare minimum, that is sharing or liking and commenting upon those posts. At the very least, information is being generated at a greater height, and that more people are able to access this information. Why? Because it's how the internet works, right? You generate more traffic the more you post about these things. The more information is shared because it comes at the top of your Google search, right? So this sort of things means that that the exposure is far greater under our side. We tell you that under when it comes to like in a world without it, right? And it's in a world without slacktivism, right? The people who share the Mark has told you about how people who share this world will feel the same conviction. But then, for the very fact that knowing your priorities only that today. At some point, you'll reach an individual who's able to contribute to alternative is actually rational ignorance. So thank you. So on this whole false, let's say the start of helping. We think that the whole idea that you make a person happy when they're student is value neutral at best and shouldn't be part of this debate. Because in that same way, that activists also feel the same, right? They feel a feel-good factor when they're helping individuals. So I don't see how exactly it's relevant to this debate. No, thank you. See, we tell you, that because some people chase the feel-good factor is parallel to individuals buying things advertised to feel happy. These individuals who chase it and feel the need to do it. No, thank you. That is this, right? At our best case scenario, more people will do things because we get the information out there. We need to recognize as well that at our worst case, that only more people will know. There is a better alternative into which what they're proposing, which is at their best case, more people will be activists. But at their worst case, ladies and gentlemen, is that no one will do anything because number one, no one knows about the issue. But number two, that no one has the capability to do these things and therefore feel that because they cannot contribute, they withdraw from these issues and feel like, no, we're not going to do anything. Closing.
So obviously, government likes awareness as well. Slacktivism works in the way in which we focus on the most politicized issue like Paris. Why are you okay with awareness?
Because the comparative is, ladies and gentlemen, not knowing about a single thing in which you can help individuals. And the comparative is, at least we are helping individuals in a certain tragedy, for example, the Paris tragedy or the Greek refugees, and forcing politicians to do something about it, right? This is where Marx incentives will never engage with, right? We told you about how these individuals would it would affect politicians, right? When they see the popularity of these posts, when they see that there are support for this sort of motions, they would push to the very top of their agenda. Why is this important? It's because these individuals on the ground are the ones without political capital. But compare it to a politician who actually has the power to push this through legislative measures and the power to push this sort of changes, we think that we can make some form of change. But the second thing we've talked to you about is the incentives, right? We talk how cost of health. We think that there is a better probability of you finding individuals who can have no cares.
You do not have to be rich. You do not have to be rich to directly donate because charity is accessible to a lot of people. If a normal individual cannot tweet, I can only contribute their own money. How is this regrettable at all?
Because when individuals share these posts, that show that they also have the same belief and the same conviction. That means these individuals, the moment they get the resources to help, would also contribute to that charity that you wanted to talk about, right? Because these people, if they just they choose to just believe these things or not, they will be forced to defend those convictions and forced to defend those beliefs under our second thing support talked about is about how these individuals are less likely to back down from the start. Why is this important? It's because we told you they are less likely to oppose progressive change, right? We told you about how it affects politicians, social legislation. But more importantly, it also affects where it removes the fear of isolation, right? Where we empower individuals who feel the support of the community and therefore they would feel the support from this community, they will come out, and that's how you gain more critical mass, that's how you gain more support for this individual. But this also creates an environment where these individuals feel comfortable, they will feel they will get some form of emotional support. Three things we talked to you about. We talked to you about how the incentives of these individuals, we talked to you about how they're less likely to back down from themselves and more likely to help. But even at our worst case, ladies and gentlemen, we tell you we have more education and awareness. We talk to you about how we encourage other individuals to come out and support the wave of liberalization. For all those reasons, opening opposition.
Thank you for that speech. I invite member of council.
I really actually expect people to actually do something, for example, doing the best because of the rating and telling them that they should not go.
Can have a plethora of issues to pick from. Slacktivism is when there is one hashtag at that point. This police, and I've extensively talked about this, but there's one argument that we need to debunk. My first question: can people, the opening opposition's entire crux was that people can actually help via selectivism. And because they are doing the bare minimum they can, because they don't have resources, this is the best way that they can help. We argue, no. First of all, these individuals can help, these individuals can donate to like GoFundMe.com or whatever, right? We think that's perfectly okay. But at a point in time when you feel that you've done enough by sharing a post or changing your picture, you hinder that change that will ever happen. But second response, even if, right, we think that the discussion that happens under closing of government is even better, because one of the standards of selectivism that hinders change, it is first of all extremely politically biased. That's why we regret it. More often than not, selectivism happens to issues that are very, very mainstream, right? Individuals pick and choose things that have a lot of reaction. You control social media, impose a value upon these issues, and say that these issues are more important than issues that happen outside. What this means is that the focus on these issues are extremely reactionary, and there's no longer a need basis. Why is this then harmful? First of all, now the help that's provided, if there were any, is provided by a need, is no longer provided by a needs basis. This means that the help given has the most likes on Facebook, and that's the best case scenario for both sides of opposition. This means the more often than not, places like Burundi, where Ebola happened, right, or Burkina Faso that has malaria, are less likely to get funding because people just don't care about these countries, because it is not up there like France. It is not up there like all these kind of issues that happen on the world. No, thank you. This means that they are less likely to spread their resources on their best case there. So we are engaging with opposition at their best possible case where help does get there, but you're not actually helping the people that actually need it. But then we are willing to argue, will these people actually get help? We don't think so. At that point in time, when organizations see that a certain group of community is getting a lot of likes, they are more likely to restructure their calculus in order to provide help. This